Hello, my name is Chris Hariza. I'm the Planning and Environmental Coordinator at the Bureau of Land Management, Arizona State Office here in Phoenix, and I'm also the Project Manager for the Northern Arizona Proposed Withdrawal Environmental Impact Statement. Now, this project was initiated in July of 2009 when the Secretary of Interior published a Notice of Proposed Withdrawal in the Federal Register. When he did that, that notice proposed a 20-year withdrawal from location and entry of new mining claims on a little over 1 million acres north and south of the Grand Canyon. It also initiated a 2-year segregation period to give us time to study potential uranium mining effects within the segregation area. Now, when Secretary Salazar gave us direction to start this study, he gave us two directions that were of particular importance to us. One is that our analysis should be based on the best available science. And the second is that it should be objective, that we should conduct an analysis that's not biased and not towards any particular outcome. So what have we been doing for the last year and a half? Well, the National Environmental Policy Act not only directs us to do analysis on a particular project, but also defines a process that we go through to do that analysis. The first step in that process is to define the purpose. Why are we conducting this analysis? And the Secretary of Interior did that. He told us what the purpose was in the Federal Register notice that he published in July of 2009. And what he told us was the underlying purpose of this withdrawal is to protect the natural, cultural, and social resources in the Grand Canyon watershed from the possible adverse effects of locatable mineral exploration and development that could occur in the segregated area. The next step in the process is to talk to the public, to find out what they feel the scope of our analysis should be, what we call public scoping. And to do that, we held several meetings and asked for comment letters to be sent to us. During that time, the public helped us define what the issues were that we should analyze and what we should particularly focus on. We received over 83,000 comment letters from 90 different countries, so apparently this project is of interest to a lot of people. At the same time we were doing that, the U.S. Geological Survey initiated some supplemental studies and in February of 2009 published Scientific Investigation Report 2010-5025. And the studies that they conducted were to determine what the amount of uranium is available in the area. They wanted to find out if there were any effects from legacy mines that were mined in the 1980s. They wanted to do, and they collected water samples to determine if there were possible effects from uranium mining on surface and groundwater, and they analyzed what the biological pathways for ecotoxicity of uranium were to both wildlife and plants. That study was published in February of 2009, which is only 6 months, and that's an extraordinarily short time for a peer-reviewed scientific study. So once we had the science, and once we'd heard from the public what the important issues were, we settled down to writing an environmental impact statement. And when I say we, I'm not referring only to the BLM. The BLM is the lead agency on this project, but we also had a lot of help. We have 15 cooperating agencies that participated in the project, especially the federal agencies listed here, the U.S. Forest Service, the National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Geological Survey were all very involved in helping to review and comment on the draft environmental impact statement as we were writing it and providing other scientific information that we used, and even in some cases helping to edit sections of the document. But we also had 11 other cooperating agencies that were involved. We have 4 agencies from the state of Arizona, including the Arizona Game and Fish Department and the Arizona State Land Department. We have 2 tribal governments that have been involved, as well as 5 county governments, 3 from southern Utah and 2 from northern Arizona. All of these people have been involved as partners in writing this EIS. They've had access to draft versions of the document, and to all the supporting documents that went into developing this environmental impact statement. Besides those cooperating agencies, 7 tribes asked us to consult with them on a formal government-to-government basis. And so we've been doing that as well. As of early February, we've held 23 meetings with these tribes, and since then, we've had a number of other meetings and have more scheduled through the month of March. So now we have a draft environmental impact statement, and this EIS was released to the public on February 18th, 2011. And where we are in the process is we're asking you, the public, to comment on this draft environmental impact statement. So how are you going to do that? Well, you need to know a little bit about the EIS before you can comment on it. And the EIS is organized in a way that we hope you'll be able to find what you're looking for. Chapter 1 of the EIS is the introduction, and in that chapter are the reasons that we're doing this analysis. For example, the purpose that I read a little earlier is located in Chapter 1. Chapter 2 are the alternatives that we analyzed, and we analyzed 4 alternatives, including the no action alternative, which would be no withdrawal. We analyzed the proposed withdrawal that came from the notice the Secretary published in the Federal Register, which is to withdraw approximately 1 million acres, and 2 reduced acreage withdrawals, which I'll talk about in a little more detail in a minute. Chapter 3 of the EIS is what we call the affected environment. It's a description of the current conditions on the ground of the resources that could be affected by mining should it occur in the area. Chapter 4 is the impact analysis, and there is other supporting information in the EIS, mostly in the appendices, and probably the most important of those is what we call the reasonable foreseeable development scenario, which describes what the EIS team thinks is a reasonable amount of mining development that could occur in each of those alternatives. Now, as I said, we analyzed 4 alternatives in the EIS. Alternative A, I've mentioned before, is the no action alternative. No withdrawal would occur. In that alternative, the reasonable foreseeable development scenario estimates 30 mines would be developed over a 20-year period. Alternative B is the action that was proposed by the Secretary in his notice, which is to withdraw approximately 1 million acres. Even in that alternative, we estimate 11 mines would be developed in the area, because even a withdrawal is subject to valid existing rights. And we anticipate that up to 11 mines could occur on mining claims that have already been developed, and some amount of uranium ore is known to occur there. Now, the other 2 alternatives that we analyzed are reduced acre withdrawals. Alternative C would withdraw approximately 653,000 acres. In that alternative, 18 mines might be developed. And in alternative D, it's a even smaller withdrawal area, a little over 300,000 acres. We anticipate 26 mines might be developed. And I'd like to show maps of these withdrawal areas and these alternatives so you understand a little better what they're talking about and where they are in the world. The 3 parcels that you see bounded in red, they're described as the north, east, and south parcel, are the areas that are proposed for withdrawal in the Secretary's notice in the Federal Register. To give you a little context to where they are in the world, that purple streak through the middle of the map is the Grand Canyon National Park. So we're not talking about mining in the Grand Canyon, but we are talking about it near the Grand Canyon within the watershed that drains into the Grand Canyon. So alternative B, the proposed action, would withdraw all federal minerals within those areas bounded in red from further mining claim recordation and location, and only mines that could be developed would be on claims that have already been put there and that have been determined to be valid. Now, alternative A would be no withdrawal in the same area. The first partial withdrawal area, alternative C, are in the same parcels. This is a little different look at those parcels. And it's a reduced acreage withdrawal, and the way we came up with this alternative is that we had specialists in various resources such as archaeologists, wildlife biologists, hydrologists in a room, and we had them map where the important resources are in each of those different categories, recreation and others as well. And we looked at the highest value resources and where two or more of those resources that might be affected by mining occur. And so this withdrawal is those areas where two or more or high value resources are located within the larger parcels. Again, it's about 300 or 650 some thousand acres. Alternative D is a further reduced withdrawal proposal, and it's where the most important, highest concentration of resources are, where three or more of those resources occur in the same place. Again, it's a little over 300,000 acres. So we conducted an environmental impact analysis of all four alternatives. We started with alternative A. So alternative A, because it's the alternative that allows for continued mining as there is now, serves as the baseline analysis. So what happens in a withdrawal like this is the no-action alternative is essentially a generalized impact analysis of mining in the area. So as you read the impact analysis for alternative A in the EIS, you'll see a general description of the impacts of uranium mining within these parcels. We tried to be as specific as we can, but we don't know where those 30 mines might go. And so for some impacts, we had to be pretty general in our descriptions. For example, a mine located on the east side of a parcel may have a different haul route than a mine located on the west side. So as far as our description and impact analysis for uranium ore hauling, it's fairly general because we don't know exactly what routes will be taken. We've tried to be as specific as we possibly can, however. So what happens then is the other three alternatives, the withdrawal alternatives, are written as comparisons to alternative A. And so in essence, they are reduced impacts of mining. So that the impacts of a withdrawal are expressed as the reduced impacts of mining that could occur should that withdrawal be selected. Now the impacts we wrote about, we tried to be as quantitative as possible. In other words, if we knew what the numbers were, for example, we could estimate how many acres of wildlife habitat were disturbed, we would say how many acres it was. But for many impacts, it's either at least difficult or impossible to quantify what those impacts are. And so many of the impacts are described in what we call qualitative terms. And we define those terms, but you may see terms such as minor or moderate or major impacts because we don't necessarily have the ability to be quantitative in those values. So here we are now. We've published our environmental impact statement, and we're asking you, the public, to comment on the draft. The comment period is 45 days from the day the notice of availability was published in the Federal Register, which was, as I said earlier, February 18th of 2011. So the public comment period extends through April 4th of 2011. And when we ask you to comment, what are we really asking for? Well, we want you to make your comments as specific as possible. What we want are substantive comments. What are substantive comments? Well, substantive comments are comments that really do one or more things, one or more of these 5 things. First of all, they'll question with some reasonable basis the accuracy of the information in the draft EIS. They could question with, again, some reasonable basis the adequacy or the methodology or the assumptions used for the environmental analysis. They could present valid new information that we didn't have available to us when we conducted the analysis. Or they may present reasonable alternatives other than those that we analyzed in the EIS. And most substantive comments would result in changes to the EIS, either to one of the alternatives or to the analysis that we conducted. Now, comments that aren't substantive are comments that are opinion, things that don't necessarily have a reasonable basis. They may be comments that are just in favor of or against something that's in the EIS. Comments that don't pertain to the project area are not substantive either. For example, if you have a comment about uranium mining in Colorado, well, that wouldn't be considered substantive because that's not in the project area. Also, comments that are just vague questions, open-ended questions that aren't specific, those are not substantive comments as well. So what we want are your comments written, and we need comments that are substantive. The regulations for NEPA only require that we respond to substantive comments. Now, if we get, and we will get, a lot of non-substantive comments, they'll be a part of the record. We'll track them, we'll conduct some analysis on them and provide them to the Secretary of Interior as information for his decision making, but we do not have to respond to those in the environmental impact statement. So we have 4 public meetings scheduled. Those meetings are scheduled during the week of March 7th. The first meeting is on the 7th of March here in Phoenix at the Bureau of Land Management National Training Center. The next meeting is March 8th in Flagstaff at the High Country Conference Center. The next meeting is the 9th in Fredonia at the high school. And the 10th, we're meeting in Salt Lake City at the Homewood Suites downtown. All of these meetings begin at 6 o'clock at night, and we hope to conclude at 8:30. Also, on our website, we have a lot of information available to you. All the materials that will be provided at the public meetings will be on the website. The complete draft environmental impact statement is also there, as well as other documents that help support the analysis we conducted, such as a socioeconomic report and a link to the science report that the USGS did I mentioned earlier. The URL for that website is listed on the screen, is listed on this slide. So please go there and find the information that you would like to help you write comments to the EIS. So what's next after the public comment period? Well, we'll collect your comments and we'll respond to the substantive comments, and the comments that are substantive, that result in changes to the EIS, will mean that we'll have another environmental impact statement to write. We'll make some changes to the draft, and when we're ready, we'll publish a final environmental impact statement. I didn't mention earlier, but we don't have a preferred alternative in this EIS, and so the Secretary of Interior will also select a preferred alternative, and that will be a part of the final environmental impact statement. We'll release that environmental impact statement to the public, and shortly after, the Secretary of Interior will make a decision. So here we are in the public comment period. We want to hear your comments, and it's your opportunity to tell us what you think of the analysis that we did. It's human nature, I think, for you to ask us, what do we think? What's our opinion? But we need to be, as federal agencies, we need to be neutral. We don't have an opinion on what the appropriate outcome is. We want to hear from you, and we want you to arrive at your choices, at your opinions, based on the analysis in this EIS. So thank you very much. Look forward to reading your comments, and ultimately to a decision by the Secretary of Interior that will finish this project. Thank you.